So now I'm going to tell you about sketching a cake because it is very important. As cake artists, I recommend everybody to make your own unique cakes, and it's very important for everybody, including me, to all of my students. Everybody makes their own sketches, so I'm just going to take you through the process. That is very interesting in the first place, and then how we are just going to end up putting our ideas into a paper. So now I like doing it, keeping it simple, to work on a paper and a pencil where you could just erase and then redo, stuff like that. But then sketching apps are available, or you could just do it digitally as well. If you are well equipped and have an idea about that, you could go on and then have a digital sketch as well. So let's start with, say, maybe we are going to have a theme. Okay, it could be like anything, starting from like the wedding cake or the cartoon characters or anything from the series and stuff like that. So the first thing that will come to us is the theme that we need to work on. Now if it is the theme, say for example, now let's just have a sea theme cake and underwater sea theme cake, right? Now if that is the theme that we are going to work on, the first step that we need to do, like we are going to do a 4-step process. Okay, so the first step will be to go to Pinterest, okay, and look for the themed cakes that are actually existing. Now when you're going to do that, the first thing is to have an idea of how the existing cakes are there for that specific theme. Okay, now the second point in that same step is to make sure that you're not going to replicate a cake that is already there. Okay, because if we are going to replicate a cake as exactly as it is, then that will be termed as plagiarism, and copying somebody else's work as it is just not going to work out. And if that person claims the ownership of that particular design, then we will have to end up sorting things out, which is not going to go really well, and we don't want to take up that stress. Okay, so try to take only inspirations from the existing images. Now I'm just going to search for underwater sea themed cakes. Okay, so now this is what we see. We see like there are ruffles, and the animals are made. There are 2 tiers, and then there are 3 tiers, single tier as well. So look for inspiration. See if you really like a simplistic cake like this without too many elements, or maybe you like to make a cake with a lot of drama around like this. Then obviously these are tiered cakes. So let me look for a single tier cake. You also can look for a 2-tier cake, and then see the elements that are there, which you could just put it on a single tier cake as well. So look for ideas. Now maybe you could just have the the waves popping out like this in the cake. You just drag down to look for similar images. Now this is good, now without too many figurines, but then you can just take inspirations in the way that it is being photographed. Now that is like really simple with like very minimal elements, but the sail is just popping out. So you can see the isomalt or sugar pops that are there on the cake. And now go on, and if your theme is just getting diluted, like in here it is just going on and getting diluted, you go back and then get back in track for the theme that you are searching. Okay, so first thing is about looking for ideas from different cakes. Okay, how have they done? Now look at this cake where the waves are done like spiral circles, right? So waves can be done in the form of ruffles, or then like the spiral, or like this where you can have royal icing or even buttercream spread around. and there are 2D elements that are there in this particular cake. So just go around and look for ideas. That will be the first step. Okay, now we are just trying not to use one cake as exactly as it is and then replicate, but we are having an idea. Okay, so here the sand is made out of, say, maybe processed cookies, and then the waves are done with spirals, and maybe the fish is there, and here's a starfish and stuffs like that. Okay, so the next step that we need to do is to go to Google and then look for underwater sea images, sea theme. Okay, and then go to the images and look for the elements. Now see whichever pictures you're finding it interesting. Now see what elements are there, because these are the ones that are going to make your work unique from the Pinterest cakes that you have seen. Now, are the extra elements, the underwater weeds that are there, the plants that are there, are they anything interesting to you for you to work on? Okay, and you could save those images as you're working. See if you like any fishes or the turtle and the crab and the expressions in the little animals that are there. Would you be interested to pick ideas from that? So now once you have the images that are there, you need to write down the elements that you are going to pick up. So what kind of fish, what kind of turtle, are you going to use a crab, is starfish going to be there? So list down the elements that you want to place on your cake, and you're also going to keep the added elements, and you're going to save those images from which you're going to use the elements that are there. Now here this one is quite interesting as well, where the sides of the cake could have these animals, and obviously these elements that are there at the bottom, the seaweed or the underwater plants, and then you see like a palm tree in an island that is just placed on the top. Then you could think of something like that, and also you could improvise even from the images that you are now looking. Now you can have a fish that is just popping out of the cake, so you'll have only the face of the cake on the top. So this is just one example of just working out on a underwater sea theme, but it could be any theme for that matter that you're going to pick up. So the first thing you will do is to go to Pinterest and look for the images that are similar to the theme that you want to work, and the second thing is to go on into the Google itself and then find the images that are specific to that theme and write down the elements that you are going to make in 3D and 2D. So first list down all the elements that you've picked up from the Google images, and from there divide between whether you're going to use it on top of the cake and then on the sides of the cake. Now once you have that elements written down, think of whether you're going to do the sides of the cake elements in 3D or 2D. Now if it is 3D, like the starfish can be 3D, but it can still be on the sides of the cake. And if you have other elements like maybe a fish that you want to show that is on the sides of the cake, where that will be the water, then you can decide it can be a 2D also. Now after you've decided what is going to be on top of the cake and then on the sides of the cake, now divide between 2D and 3D and have your elements ready. Now once you have the elements ready, the next thing is to go for the color scheme. Now for the color scheme, you will find this website colorhunt.co, colorhunt.co. When you go there, this is the screen that you will be getting, and there are quite a lot of color palettes for you to take a look at. Now because you are going to find a theme, and then if you're going to randomly place the elements in different colors that you feel like you want to use, then maybe they are not aesthetically going to fit well together because the colors could be random. But you want the colors to be in harmony, and so that the entire cake as a whole is going to look really good. To be on the safer side, now if you are having the color sense, then doing it randomly you're going to get it naturally. Now if you do not have the color sense and if the color scheme doesn't come to you naturally, then taking the help of color palettes or mood boards are going to be very useful. For that matter, you can come on to the site, and there are a lot of different themes and color palettes. When you're going to search for, it is going to give you the color codes there for you to search. Now pick up one color in which you want to decide to drape your cake. Now say it is underwater theme, and so we are just going with blue. Now we have the blue here, and then this color palette is going to give us different frames in which the colors in harmony with the main color is going to be together with it. Now whether you want it in ombre shade like this one, or would you want some contrasting colors in your cake, which is this one. Okay, so I am just going to look for some more in blue, and there is like quite a bit of contrast in this, where there is a bit of yellow and the red, and you have blue, and then there is also pink. So what we are trying not to do is, in a color palette like this, where you have blue with a light yellow and a pink, now we have another palette where there is blue with a orange and a red here. Now in a theme that we are going to work, we should try and avoid where we are having a blue and a pink, and then there is this red and orange as well. Now this color of the blue will go with this color of the yellow and the red, and now if you are going to have a pink in it which is pastel, then the harmony is just broken. And to avoid that particular accident, it is better that we first pick up a color code and then have the color of the cake draped in a specific color. That now you are going to search for blue, then look for blue, and then what blue you can just stick to the colors that is there in that particular mood board, which is the color palette here. Okay, now once you have that, then you start finding the colors of the elements which is within this palette. Now you are going to stick to this palette only, then you are going to avoid having too much drama or too much disturbance in the color combination that you are going to use on your cake. Now write down the elements that you have, and then mark on which figurine is going to be what color. Now you already have the theme decided, you already have plans for whether your waves is going to be with the inspiration that you've maybe looked at from one of the cake, and then whether you're just going to have 3D that is made from this cake, whether the face is going to be outside, or am I going to have a tree that is on an island, now this is going to be on the top, and stuffs like that. You're just going to put the ideas together and add more elements from the Google images that you are looking for in this specific theme. Then go find a color palette that you want to have your elements in, and then the fourth stage, you have to put all these ideas into a sketch that we will be doing using a pen and paper. So now I am just going to start with making my own sketch. So my sketch is going to be animal theme. I'm going to have an armature, and I'm going to just have the round cake made. And however, is just for an insight for you to know how to sketch. I've done the forest theme cake on a square cake. Okay, so now around, so this is the cake, right? And now around this I'm just going to have a cake board, and say suppose you're just going to have a cake stand. Okay, and now I'm just going to have a tree here placement, and then I'm just going to have a lot of branches around. So it just can be a simple sketch like that. Okay, so don't have to worry that they have to look like completely real and all that. Okay, so the tree is done. Now I'm just going to look for the placement of the elements. I just want to place one squirrel here on the tree, and then I just want to place another animal here, maybe a fox. Okay, and then one more here, and I want to place one here and then another here. Okay, and maybe I'll see if the sides look quite plain. I can just have trees around on the cake, and just think of having leaves. So I'm just planning to use microwave sponge for the leaves, and some cherry, and then think of having some cherries fallen down on the cake, and some tiny rocks and grasses, and maybe some leaves around on the cake. Okay, so now to be really very sure, we can just do a color pencil shading around in here to have a complete idea of what color palette that we are going to use. Okay, now the size that I have done is random, but then if you're going to use tiered cake, or if you have to be sure of how the proportion of the cake that you're going to do, then say if you're going to use an 8-inch cake, now to actually have an 8-inch or a 10-inch in a paper and then get the sketch is going to be like really huge. Now if you have to do the sketching, like say from maybe for a tiered cake, then having the actual size in paper could be like really big to go on the A4 size paper. Now if you have an 8-inch cake that is like 5-inch tall is your idea, and you want to know how that is going to go on the paper, then get the numbers which is 8 and 5, and it is in inches and inches, right? Now instead of inches on the paper, make it 8 centimeter and then 5 centimeter in height. Now in centimeters it is just going to be a smaller in size, but the proportion is going to be like how exactly the cake in inches is going to be, and that will give you the exact perspective of the size of the sketch that you will be drawing, and that size is only for the outline of the cake. Now when you convert the inches, now say if you have a 10-inch diameter cake and then that is 5-inch tall, then with the scale you will do a 10 centimeter horizontally and 5 centimeter vertically, and then make a box within which you draw the cake. Now when you do that, you're going to have the right proportion, and it is not going to confuse yourself, because now once I have the size here, now I need to decide if I need to have a tree on the sides or not. Now depending on the height, now if you're visually not able to figure out how much height you would want, then it is best for you to have the inches, the numbers, and then use the same numbers in centimeters to put it on the paper and then make your sketch. So once you have the sketch ready, you can just color it up to even further have a better understanding of how your final cake is going to be. And after having the sketch, keep this as a reference, and then you move on to the cake. And because you have the idea, now you know where exactly you need to place the elements. Now you have the sketch, and then in your final cake, now you feel like maybe the size is just changed a bit, or maybe your layering just happened to be that you don't want to add that extra layer because it is adding up to the weight of the cake and you want to reduce it, you are still allowed to do. And if the cake has just gone taller and maybe you never had a tree drawn in your sketch, but then you feel like after you've done the cake there is like so much space in the front and then you want to fill it up with something, you are free to do, but try to stick within the color palette and the elements that you want to use. Like maybe in this particular cake you feel like, oh my god, there is so much space, can I go and do some ruffles there? Like that's something completely contrasting to the theme that we are working. So be very specific to fall within all the steps that we made, to choose the elements within that particular theme and to fix the colors within that particular color scheme, and to have the inspirations picked up from the Pinterest with the other cakes, similar ones specific to this theme, to get an idea of how each elements are being used. Now are you going to use isomalt in certain places, and now maybe this microwave sponge I want to use, the idea has been picked up from another beautiful inspiration and now then I want to use it up on here. So how we are technically going to execute the elements is what you need to do by looking at the inspirations, but what elements you want to put, you will come up with your own idea by looking at the images in the Google and finalize the color palette. And with all the three that you've done, put the findings of yours in the paper, and after which you have a clear idea, and then from there you just move on to actually making the cake.